friends, and welcome to another WSIB Truth Matters with Joe Machado on this beautiful Monday. I hope that you had a nice weekend. The weather was certainly very nice, even though we seem to be moving into the winter. Hopefully this nice weather can stick around much longer. Anyway, for those of you who've been watching this series, I'm sure by now you can tell that it's the whole issue of the last, the final LOE review is somewhat complex, and there are a lot of different factors that is considered in the policy as to what the WSIB can do, what their authority is, depending on a variety of circumstances, taking labor market reentry or work reintegration, and healthcare and deterioration of the condition, permanent impairment, all of these different factors into the final FEL review. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to break it down into 5 somewhat short videos to talk about certain groups of those components. And that way, if you're going through the process now, or you have in the past, or there's a possibility you may be going through it in the future, you can always refer to these videos to get some perspective on what the board does and what you can expect at that final review. So in today's topic, I'm going to talk about more so the issue of permanent impairment. So a significant deterioration that takes place after the 72-month lock-in review. So in other words, you were assessed for an L. At some point, you were granted a non-economic loss award and a certain percentage. And so what happens if there's a significant deterioration of that condition after the 72-month lock-in? So I'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about temporary deterioration of that condition, or if there's a likelihood of a permanent deterioration. So in other words, the condition has become, or the condition has deteriorated and that deterioration has become permanent. What the WSIB can do in terms of a redetermination of the NEL, and also eligibility despite a previous 0 non-economic loss award. So it is possible that you would have had a 0 permanent impairment award, and how the WSIB looks at that post the 72-month lock-in review. So just hang with me for a couple of more episodes. This one and the final one coming up tomorrow. And we'll be done with this subject matter, which I happen to find extremely dry. And looking back at the thousands of cases that my firm handled, and how a lot of these decisions were made, and how the WSIB conducted itself in terms of these reviews, and just the incredible amount of, I think maybe lack of experience, or I don't know, but just a lot of arbitrary, inconsistent decision-making, with a lot of cases ending up at the tribunal. And so tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the tribunal and how they adjudicate appeals in this particular topic. So significant deteriorations post 72 months. This is what the WSIB policy states. The WSIB may review the LOE benefit after the 72-month final review if the worker suffers a significant deterioration in their work-related condition, in brackets, whether or not the work-related condition resulted in a permanent impairment. So again, that 0 NEL award. When the worker sustains a secondary condition post 72 months that is causally related to the work-related condition, this may also be considered a significant deterioration of the work-related condition for which LOE benefits may be reviewed post 72 months. So I've talked about this in probably a couple of my previous videos when dealing with a secondary condition. And it is quite possible that you may seek entitlement for a secondary condition and go through the whole process, the whole 72 months, which we're talking about 6 years, where the board didn't accept that secondary condition, and then there's an appeal, there's a decision at the tribunal, and they grant entitlement to that secondary condition. Then the WSIB would have to go back and adjudicate the 72-month lock-in review because now that secondary condition has been accepted. Or it doesn't necessarily mean that it would have had to go through the entire appeal process, although I think in my experience most of them do when dealing with entitlement to secondary conditions. But the board may have it on its own infinite wisdom accepted a secondary condition after that second 72-month lock-in review, and then that could be considered a permanent or a deterioration of the condition, in which case it would open the door for that previous 72-month lock-in decision being revisited. So what does the board determine or accept as a significant deterioration? So basically they go on to state that a significant deterioration refers to a marked degree of deterioration in the work-related impairment that is demonstrated by a measurable change in clinical findings. So what do they do in that instance? Well, to determine if there's evidence of a significant deterioration, the WSIB considers factors such as the need for further active medical healthcare intervention to improve the worker's condition. They provide an example of surgery. That's not the only indicator. Establishment of clinical evidence to support a significant deterioration. So it's important to make note of any changes to your condition to your doctors, because that information may be very useful in the future. Evidence of increased clinical restrictions or whether functional abilities have changed. For example, evidence of an increase in restricted activities may support a finding of significant temporary deterioration or a job change impacts. So again, extremely important to make note, to talk to your doctor and explain any changes that are taking place in your condition. While a worker may take occasional day off from work, this is generally not indicative of a significant deterioration. Of course not, because people take a day off from work just because they're looking for an unpaid day at home. Of course, we know in the real world that doesn't happen. But anyway, again, that's why I always say, doesn't matter how minute it might appear, if you find that there's any deterioration in your condition, report it. Report it to your doctor, get it noted in the file, because it may very well be necessary in the future. So what does the board say about a temporary deterioration? Where the information supports the worker has a significant temporary deterioration, and if the individual experiences a loss of earnings benefits may be reviewed from the period of the deterioration until the worker recovers from the significant temporary deterioration as supported by clinical evidence. So if there is a deterioration of your condition and it's not permanent, it just basically means that the board will look at medical information. And if you're experiencing a loss of earnings benefit, then the mechanism to go in and reopen that 72-month lock-in decision would be met in this respect. Now, what if that deterioration becomes permanent? And what is it that the WSIB can do after that 72-month lock-in decision? Well, basically what they're saying is that at the time of a significant temporary deterioration is accepted, it may not be apparent that the worker requires a permanent impairment review. The WSIB continually monitors and assesses the healthcare information to decide if an initial determination or redetermination of the worker's permanent impairment should be arranged. So that would be your non-economic loss award. If the WSIB continuously monitors the healthcare and makes decisions, who's monitoring this information? Is it a case manager without a medical degree? Is it one of their doctors reviewing paper records and not necessarily assessing you, the individual? Well, I think you all know what happens there. I've said it many times, they shouldn't be in the business of providing any sort of medical advice or opinions in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, we go on. If an initial determination or redetermination of the worker's permanent impairment is likely required, payments can be reviewed up until the point that this takes place. Based on the result of the initial determination or redetermination, the review period may be extended further. However, whenever the WSIB determines that an initial determination or redetermination is not required, the review period ends. The WSIB must complete this review and fully notify the worker of ongoing wage loss entitlement within 5 business days from the date it is decided that an initial determination or redetermination is not required. If at any point it is determined that the worker no longer has an impairment, the benefit is terminated the following day. If a worker undergoes an initial determination that results in a 0% non-economic loss rating, LOE benefits or LOE benefit entitlement continues for a period of maximum of 2 weeks until the worker is notified in writing. So, I guess that's really self-explanatory in some ways. I don't really agree with it, and you probably don't either. I mean, you know, first of all, they shouldn't be involved in the review of medical and making medical determinations. And that way, there aren't any surprises that your benefits are going to be cut off the next day. That information should be coming from your doctor, and they should be considering that information in its face value. Not somebody sitting behind a desk who's never seen you or assessed you, making a paper review and determination based on that information, or a layperson who has absolutely no medical training and probably isn't registered with the College of Physicians and Surgeons. So, at the end of the day, if there's a permanent deterioration and the WSIB decides, in their infinite wisdom, that there's a likelihood that it's going to result in an increase to the NEL award, then they go ahead and provide for that NEL determination or redetermination rather. And then they make a decision regarding loss of earnings benefits, and you may be cut off the fund the next day, or you may be cut off in 2 weeks. Anyway, yeah, it's, as they say, horseshit. So, what do they say if you've had a non-economic loss assessment and that assessment resulted in a 0 award? So this is what they say. A 0% NEL rating means that prior to the final review, a worker does not have a permanent impairment and therefore is not entitled to a NEL benefit. Such a worker cannot request a redetermination of his or her 0% NEL benefit. However, where a worker previously assessed at a 0% NEL rating suffers a significant deterioration following the final review, that worker may be eligible for a review of loss of earnings benefits. If the significant deterioration is temporary, the review period ends when the worker recovers. Excuse me. If it is eventually determined that the worker may likely have a permanent impairment, the WSIB may conduct a new permanent impairment determination. So, pretty straightforward. It is possible that prior to the 72-month lock-in review, there was an L rating and a 0 award was granted. And then there's a deterioration in the condition post that 72-month lock-in, and that deterioration becomes permanent, at which time the WSIB would conduct an L redetermination. If it is a 0% redetermination, then you're not allowed, or you can't, according to their policy, request a redetermination of that 0% award. So when there is a deterioration of the condition, how does that impact the loss of earnings benefit? What does WSIB do in that particular situation? And here's what they say. So although the LOE benefit may be paid or recalculated at the outset when the worker has suffered a significant deterioration, the WSIB must conduct a further review of the locked-in benefit and, if warranted, recalculate the benefit before the review opportunity ceases. This review should normally take place when a significant and temporary deterioration ends, whenever the WSIB determines that a null determination or redetermination of the worker's permanent impairment is not required. Again, who's making that determination and based on what? Or within 24 months of the null processing date, if the null determination or redetermination confirms a significant deterioration of the permanent impairment, resulting in a null or an increased null benefit based on the facts of the case. So that seems to be pretty straightforward. How does the WSIB deal with extensions for the 24-month period? And so basically what they look at is the 24-month review period can be extended if the WSIB awards an initial null benefit or conducts a redetermination resulting in a null increase, and the worker is cooperating in a return to work plan, in bracket, with training that is not completed by the end of the 24-month period. The WSIB has 30 days from the completion of the return to work plan to conduct a review of the LOE benefit. So if there's a permanent deterioration at the 72-month lock-in review, and that deterioration becomes permanent, and it results in a determination or redetermination. I should say that an initial determination could be actually a secondary condition that's been accepted. That would be the first determination of the null. Redetermination would be of a previously established null percentage. So that's the difference between those two. And so if it becomes permanent, that requires a null, and there's a null increase, and you're involved in a return to work or return to work activities that involves retraining, then that 24-month extension could be increased if the 24 months are up, but you're still in return to work activities with retraining. And then as soon as that retraining is over or completed, then the WSIB will stop the LOE benefit 30 days from the date that the retraining program has been completed. So then the WSIB also talks about one very important aspect of the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, which is a requirement to report a material change in circumstances. And so basically what they say with respect to that is that the worker is responsible for reporting any material change in circumstances that occurs prior to the 72 months. When there's a material change in circumstances prior to 72 months and it was not reported on time, the WSIB may review and adjust the LOE benefit retroactive to the date of the change. When the WSIB reviews the LOE benefit after 72 months, in bracket, in cases where the final review has not taken place by the 72nd month, or there's a significant deterioration after the 72 months, in bracket, the worker is responsible for reporting any material change in circumstances. When there is a material change in circumstances, whether reported on time or not, the WSIB may review and adjust the payments for any time during the review period, and multiple reviews may be conducted during the review period if warranted. So it is extremely important to report any material change. Otherwise, that can result in reduction of benefits retroactively and all sorts of headaches that you don't want to have. So it's important that you follow through with that. Okay, friends, so that concludes today's topic on redetermination, determination of NEL, following the 72-month lock-in, and how the board factors all of that in with the right to reopen the NEL 72-month, or the LOE 72-month lock-in decision, and what's considered at that point. So I think this provides a pretty good overview of what can be done and what you can expect if going through that situation. So coming up tomorrow, it is the final fifth video of this topic. And so I'm going to be talking about a review and analysis of WSIB decisions pertaining to the 72-month lock-in. And that's going to be an eye-opener. You're going to find some very interesting things, particularly when the tribunal, vice chair or panels, when rendering decisions, go against what the WSIB has decided with respect to reopening the 72-month lock-in, and what they've done and how the tribunal reverses. So it'll be very interesting because I've picked out certain key decisions that will speak very clearly to these circumstances and will amplify the vast, dramatic contrast between the WSIB decision-making and the tribunal decision-making. All right, friends. Well, as always, I really appreciate you taking time to watch these videos. And for my subscribers, I appreciate you sharing my videos with others. As you know, I started this channel around 5 months ago, and my goal is to basically reach every injured worker in this province, past and present. I did build the largest paralegal firm in Ontario with over 10,000 clients spanning every corner of this province. In my opinion, in the past 30 years, the WSIB changes to legislation and policy and how WSIB adjudicates claims has consistently presented monumental problems for injured workers in this province and made it extremely difficult to apply for and continue to qualify for benefits. Those are my views. These are my opinions based on over 30 years of dealing with these people. And so my goal with this channel is to provide information based on my experiences, the experiences of my firm and our paralegals, and in having handled thousands of claims from pre-1990 to Bill 162 legislation, Bill 99 legislation, the 1997 Workers' Compensation Act as amended, the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, thousands of decisions from the tribunal being reviewed to prepare cases for our clients. So I would say that I have a lot to talk about and a lot to offer, and being a subscriber to my channel is free. It doesn't cost anything. So if you're not a subscriber, I invite you to become a subscriber and share my videos with others, because there's thousands of people in Ontario who need help right now. And you may know those people. They may be embarrassed to talk about it or talk about their situation, but they're out there. There's thousands of them. And I also started a firm, WSIBsettlements.com, and I invite you to have a look at what we offer. There's a series of tools that I personally developed and created to make navigating the WSIB easy, simple, where I've provided support mechanisms to make sure that any person, regardless of academic skills, training, education, knowledge of computers, and how to operate computers, regardless of any of that, every single person can benefit from the tools that I've developed, and they're accessible. So I really encourage you to have a look at those tools. But regardless of whether or not you become a member of WSIBsettlements.com, I'm going to continue to provide information and tools that you can use to understand where you're at and to help you forge a path forward to succeeding in your claim. Because the WSIB, in my view, is continuously scheming to put in place systems, barriers, to prevent you from getting what you're likely entitled to receive. So, friends, as always, thank you very much for watching these videos. Please continue to share my videos, and I look forward to the final video on this topic tomorrow. All right, friends, as always, take care.